Hello, the program time about the primary events of the day. The political situation in Azerbaijan is becoming quite alarming. Special designation police continue through the force of weapons to coerce the president, Heydar Aliyev, and the speaker, Rasul Guliyev, into resignation. The actions of the special police are being directed by the Deputy Minister of Internal Affairs, Ravshan Gavadov. Our correspondent has made contact with the station over the telephone because the video signal is not coming through today. By orders of the Minister of Internal Affairs of Azerbaijan, today a unit of police of special designation was disbanded. During 3 days, it's commanded to relinquish its military technology, weapons, ammunition, and other property. This measure, as is said in the statement of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, was undertaken because the division has become lately uncontrollable and has become a patron of mafia structures. In official Baku, they feel that the opinion of the Ministry of Internal Affairs and its steps are directly connected with events which occurred 2 days ago in the northwest of Azerbaijan, when in the Khajrak and Aksimir regions here, local special designation police units seized several administrative buildings, and from the local militia division, several units of combat technology. Now, according to certain reports, the special police units, whose ranks are up to 3,000 men strong, is located at one of its bases in a housing complex 8 kilometers from the center of the city, and evidently has no intention to submit to the orders of the leadership of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Here in Baku, everything is tranquil. Because of the state of emergency in effect, the streets of the city are being patrolled by fortified police regiments. Today, the President of the Republic, Heydar Aliyev, held a meeting in the presence of the leadership of the Office of the Prosecutor General and the Ministry of Defense of Azerbaijan. Ravshan Gavadov was dismissed as Deputy Minister of Internal Affairs. According to the version of law enforcement organs of Azerbaijan, this incident was a result of the battle of authorities with local commercial structures connected with the special designation police. Recently in Ganja, Azerbaijani police detained several trucks with a contraband cargo of copper, which was escorted by a unit of special designation police. Attempting to return the confiscated copper, possibly the special designation units undertook extreme actions, but there are political implications as well. In the Republic, there's an open confrontation between supporters of the President Heydar Aliyev, the former Prime Minister of Azerbaijan, Suret Gusenov. The 4th of October last year, Gusenov was accused of an attempted state coup and was soon thereafter dismissed. Currently, he's in Moscow, and together with Sayaz Mutalibov is developing his plan of return to Azerbaijan. Gusenov asserts that he will fight with Aliyev only through political means and independently, not counting on protectors from Russia. A third version is not excluded, that the attack on the administrative building was preceded by the unlawful detainment of activists of the National Front of Azerbaijan in those regions. At the same time, the leader of the NFA, Alsubaf Alchibey, denies his involvement in those events. We have just learned that the talks of the authorities with the leadership of the special designation police units were severed after the attempted armed attack on the police building. In Kazakhstan, there's also a complicated political situation, although Nursultan Nazarbayev feels that comparing the October of '93 events in Moscow with the suspension of the parliament in Kazakhstan is unjust at the least. In our case, he said, it's not a confrontation between two branches of government, but a legal coalition created through the incongruity of the Constitution with several acts of the Central Election Commission. The President of Kazakhstan emphasized that despite the constructive relations which developed between him and the parliament, he adopted the only possible decision in this case, that is to submit to the requirements of the law. Meanwhile, 72 deputies of the Kazakhstani parliament today declared a 3-day warning hunger strike against the suspension the 11th of March by the president. Interfax was told this by a deputy, the famous poet and social activist Al-Shah Suleimanov. Previously, an indefinite hunger strike was declared by 3 deputies as well. Suleimanov emphasized that Kazakhstani deputies will continue to fight for their rights because they don't recognize the suspension of parliament. And now information from the State Duma of Russia. It's known that today they were to have the final discussions on the draft budget and also discuss the Chechen situation. The topic of the television channel Ostankino emerged once again. Again, the established pattern of discussing the agenda items for almost 2 hours fell into place today. After such a long warm-up, the deputies adopted the budget finally within only 15 minutes. And although the procedure of the 4th reading did not plan any lengthy discussion, amendments were added to the document and linguistic and legal expertise had been conducted. Among addenda, there were amendments on increasing subsidies for science through decreasing subsidies for running the government. But even the budget didn't evoke such emotion as the law on the elections of deputies. Today, the parliamentarians were so concerned for the future that during the vote became so confused over the draft, they twice revoked the same statute. Again, debates arose were precipitated by the quantitative correlation of one-mandate representatives and deputies within party lists. If the president has suggested the proportion of 150 persons to 300, that is, a party minority, parliamentarians wanted there to be equality, and as a result, the deputies insisted on their version. Also, they proposed an eased format of the pre-election procedure for those parties and movements currently working in the Duma. But the deputies spoke out for equality and deprived themselves of such benefits. Discussions were so turbulent that Ivan Rybkin several times asked his colleagues to calm down. And in the afternoon, the electronic voting system malfunctioned, and in the Duma, an additional recess was called. Today, the deputies announced the registration of the group Stability. However, for now, these deputies refused to be interviewed. In the morning, the Duma had decided to re-examine in the third reading the law to suspend the privatization of Ostankiно. The document had been prepared, but the parliamentarians were short of time today, and discussions were postponed, just as the information of Stanislav Gavarukhin, the chairman of the Duma Commission investigating the Chechen crisis. The president was extremely busy today, which forced him to change his business schedule. As planned earlier, he could not participate in the meeting with the general design engineers of the aviation industry in Sheremetyevo. For the 16th of March, he has scheduled several important meetings and functions, which have forced him to change today's plan. The fact that the president did not arrive caused the prime minister to alter his schedule, that is, to go to Sheremetyevo and cancel the meeting with the mayor of Moscow, where Yuri Lushkov intended to raise the question of the economic blockade of Moscow imposed by the first vice premier Anatoly Chubais. In any case, that is the official version. Significant events occurred today in the Sheremetyevo airport. The government of Russia was presented with a new type of airplane by three aviation design bureaus of Russia, Tupolev, Ilyushin, and Yakovlev. The two 204s, as in the cargo version, which already tomorrow will begin to fly the air routes of Russia. A plane of high efficiency, with economical fuel consumption, equipped with the latest innovations on fitting cargo within the fuselage. The new craft of the family of passenger yaks, intended to operate from Russian airports with routes to Europe and Africa and also in the CIS. The Il-96M, a plane of a jumbo jet type intended for comfortable flights on over long-distance routes with a large passenger capacity. It's interesting, when everyone says that Russian industry doesn't exist anymore, these planes were designed and assembled by 3,000 Russian plants and companies. The Tu-204S is planned this year to be produced in the quantity of 600, and the order for these planes from the countries of the former Soviet Union is equivalent to 1,000 items. Therefore, the business is profitable in all aspects. Viktor Chernomyrdin, having examined the new craft, stated that this is the planes which we will enter into the third millennium with, planes which meet with all standards. And today, we will discuss right now the creation of a company, financial industrial company, a company which will permit us to overcome certain difficulties, transitional difficulties in aviation and in the aviation industry. Among positive tendencies in the economy, one may include the next report from Income Bank. Incidentally, once fearing that I'd be accused of solicitation, I didn't say that it was this bank that financed the work of a summer school for young talents and many other things. On the backdrop of constant financial turbulence, instability, inflation, the affairs of Income Bank are faring successfully. According to its personal capital, it is among the 1,000 largest banks of the world, and at international banking markets, it's recognized as a reliable partner. Evidently, Russian bankers representing the young, active business world have a chance to compete with Western colleagues. What regards shareholders, the number of them has increased by almost 3 times. And now the number of bank shareholders is around 11,000. And they, together with the private shareholders, it's noteworthy that Income Bank, since the beginning of its existence, invests substantial money into various social and cultural programs. Only during the last year, having spent almost 10 million rubles to support young specialists of higher education, to the aid of veterans and invalids, and programs for motherhood and childhood. We're waiting for up-to-the-minute reports from Grozny, therefore perhaps somewhat less information is moved forward. Up-to-the-minute reports will come soon, and we'll convey that later. Now I wish to say that in the spectrum of news today there is as much contrast as in our life itself. In the Committee on Nationalities Affairs, they discussed many problems connected with the issues of nationalities and naturally the economy. In the last 4 years, 9,000 Germans have emigrated from Russia, which is 1/3 of the entire German population of the country, according to the census of 1989. Parallel with this, from Kazakhstan and Central Asia, 25,000 Germans have moved to Russia. These depressing statistics were revealed today at a briefing in the Ministry on Nationalities Affairs of Russia. The real restoration of German autonomy in the post-Soviet period had begun in 1992 after the decree of the President on measures to rehabilitate Russian Germans. However, the process is moving extremely slowly. Yes, there are decrees, and there are almost 11 resolutions, presidential decrees, to resolve these problems of Russian Germans, and unfortunately, they're not being carried out. The problem of crime is paramount in almost all the republics of the former Soviet Union. In Tajikistan today, the list of victims of organized crime grew. 2 militia personnel were shot in cold blood. In Kazakhstan, a major operation is underway to fight crime. In Russia, a figure was revealed last year. More than 200,000 crimes were the works of hands of juveniles. And today, for the first time after the collapse of the USSR, a session was held by the directors of special services of all republics of the CIS. Life itself forces the employees of a one-time single department, the KGB of the USSR, to consolidate its efforts in its battle with growing crime in the now sovereign states on the territory of the former Soviet Union. In Moscow, the first since the times of the collapse of the USSR session of the directors of the special services of the 11 republics of the CIS was held. It was dedicated to the battle with organized crime. The summary document of the session contains an agreed-upon proposal on the basic forms and directions of interaction of special services of the CIS. Efforts must be concentrated, coordinated, directed at fighting this evil. The time has arrived when these units of all the countries must join in the battle. Without real support and interaction of special services today, to conduct a directed battle against crime is impossible. The initiator of the session was the FSK of Russia. How did the president react to this? The president devotes great attention to the battle with organized crime, and this was also discussed at the last session of the Security Council. Therefore, the president welcomes any efforts which are intended to achieve that aim. According to certain sources, shot on the 13th of March in the driveway of his house, the president of the Republican Union of Entrepreneurs, the general director of the joint stock company Inter-Atlantic, Oleg Zverev, ostensibly headed one of the independent groups investigating the murder of the journalist Vlad Listyev. But as a correspondent of Intertas was told in the city internal affairs of Moscow, investigators are inclined to think that the murder of Oleg Zverev was related to his commercial activities. Regarding the investigation of the murder of Vlad Listyev, it's only known that the leaders of the criminal milieu deny their involvement in it, and the investigation for now sees no connection between the death of Listyev and the murders of people involved in the system Reklama Holding, or advertising holding. Interfax was not given the names of the 3 victims who ostensibly have some involvement with Reklama Holding. Now about weapons. I'll remind you a version was suggested of its Czech origin. The mafia attacks. Czech television and the press sounds an alarm. The public opinion survey indicates that the growth of crime today has become problem number 1. The recently tranquil Czech Republic was a desired location for organized gangs from neighboring countries. The chief of the Prague police, the Colonel Miroslav Podnik, says that operating here are criminal groups from Romania, former Yugoslavia, Bulgaria, Ukraine, Russia, and Chechnya. Of course, they make contact with the local mafia, but often fight amongst each other and stage bloody settling of accounts. Regarding the murder in Moscow of Vlad Listyev, about which much was written here, the chief of the Prague police didn't exclude the possibility that the killers truly had used a Scorpion automatic weapon or another Czech gun of the same caliber, 7.65. If the supposition of some of the Moscow investigators is true that Vlad Listyev was killed with such an automatic pistol, Scorpion, manufactured in the Czech Republic, then what? This is a light, quick-shooting automatic pistol with a great impact force penetrating a bulletproof vest, and a silencer can be used with it. And if the weapon of the murder of the television journalist is found and the Czech Republic is given a serial number, the police will do everything to trace its path to Moscow. In principle, there's only one possibility to stand up to mafia. That's constant and close cooperation of organs of law and order and all affected countries, Colonel Bornik emphasized. Now, information from the appellate court regarding information disputes. They discuss the guilt or innocence of the author of the notorious program aired on Russian television called Fascism in Russia. Several deputies, including Vladimir Zhirinovsky, asserted certain fragments of the program Fascism in Russia, which included the confessions of Alexei Videnkin, as provocational and volatile, capable of inciting nationalistic hatred. Otherwise speaking, they accused its creators of propagating fascism. As was noted by the anchorman of the program, Oleg Vokubovsky, if one follows the logic of deputies, any mention of earthquake should be viewed as propaganda of earthquake. According to him, he simply wanted to demonstrate the existence or non-existence, development or non-development of fascist organizations, and this was done with noble intentions. The court accepted the arguments of the defenders of the broadcast and sided with them. Its authors did not violate Russian legislation. With the appointment of the new leader of the Russian Committee of the Press, Sergei Glazunov, for the first time an open aggression was launched on publications of an extremist or neo-fascist line, which evidently he was not forgiven for, although our reason for meeting with him today was different. Sergei Glazunov said he intends to file suit against the Rossiyskaya Gazeta, Russian newspaper, which alleged that he, while distributing subsidies among various publications, he was guided or misguided by his own weaknesses. The paradox is in the fact itself that a member of the government files suit against the only state newspaper of the country. For me, this is an anti-government newspaper, if only because it resorts to the most undignified methods. So that today, when we so desperately need a cord, it attempts to create a clash between positions of the President, Prime Minister, the Prime Minister and the Mayor, and so on down along the vertical. Information and figures cited in this newspaper don't correspond with reality. Moreover, they deprecate my honor and dignity, not just mine personally. The formal reason for this was the desire of the committee to launch a financial inquiry of the newspaper, which exists through yours and my, all taxpayers' money. Last year, the Rossiyskaya newspaper, which hasn't got the largest readership in Russia, had received almost 25 billion rubles in state subsidies. The rest of the independent press, and that is 8,500 newspapers and magazines in the country, received 31 billion. Just think about it. Is that just? And now I can tell you about the events which are occurring in Chechnya. From Chechnya, however, lately the reports from information agencies come basically under the same headlines. Positional battles continue, no serious changes. Our film crew is working in the region, so we daily have our own information, which we have received just now. A time to scatter stones, a time to gather stones. These words in Grozny have a literal meaning. In the city, the rubble is being cleared. Homes which are irreparable, and in the center, that is about 90%, have to be blown up in order to build new ones in their place. This work is being conducted by the Ministry of Emergency Situations. But the field engineers go in first. In the city, there are still many mines remaining. People are still returning to their city. More than 100,000 have already returned home, or where that home used to be. Many residents never left Grozny all that time. They, and they are mostly Russians, simply had no place to go. And maybe also because this bread plant did not stop operating even during the most difficult war days. Where does one get medication or humanitarian aid? When will the promised pensions be paid? The answers to these questions, the residents of Grozny wanted to hear from the head of the territorial department of the federal organs in Chechnya, Nikolai Semyonov. Water will be available available in between 10 to 15 days. Water has a special value in Grozny. For now, it's brought in. The local water can't be drunk. Everyone fears epidemic outburst. The time remains for preventative work is running low before the warm spring days come. Foreseeing the beginning of heightened action by federal forces, Dudaev field commanders are intensely evacuating local residents from Argun and Misky Yurt in the direction of Gudermes. The Russian-speaking population is being kept in the capacity of a necessary shield. This was said by a representative press center of the Ministry of Defense of Russia. Meanwhile, in Moscow, talks are underway. Today, a roundtable was held on the peaceful resolution in Chechnya. Speaking before the participants of the meeting, Oleg Saskovets cautioned against an emotional, superficial assessment of Chechen events, which, in his opinion, will unavoidably precipitate changes in the army and institutions of power. The first vice premier feels that a forceful resolution of the problem does not exist, and the best recourse would be successful talks between Dudaev and the oppositional leaders. As Oleg Saskovets said, by the end of the year, the Russian government intends to revive the education and healthcare system in Chechnya and build 3,000 homes. According to the vice premier, the necessary funds have already been allotted, but because of the actions of unlawful armed formations, the process of the rebirth of the republic does not promise to be simple. As Oleg Saskovets reported, continuing to receive from outside of Chechnya weapons and money, the Dudaev fighters don't intend to lay down their weapons, and this makes improbable the hopes of a quick end to the armed resistance in the Chechen Republic. The President of the United States, Bill Clinton, has arranged to allot $11 million to aid the refugees and victims of the Chechen conflict. Figures bring thoughts to economic problems again. We go back to that again. In Moscow today, at the extended session of the Presidium of the Unions of Workers of the Coal Industry, they discussed the execution by the government of a tariff agreement and schedules to liquidate debt to the coal sector. Later, a meeting was held between the Vice Premier Chubaevs on the same issue and those members. Strict control on fulfillment of obligations of the government before miners should be one of the basic measures to resolve the problems of the coal sector. This conclusion was made today in the government building at a joint session of the directors of state and sectoral organizations with the union figures, representatives of labor collectives. The first step evidently satisfied everyone. In February, 600 billion was paid in full and 100 billion more as per the oral agreement of the miners with the vice premier and the Chubaevs. However, in the opinion of union leaders, the strict schedule of state financing won't remove all the social problems connected specifically with the coal consumers' debt. In order to untie the knot of contradictions, a special commission was set up. It has already worked in Primorye, and now it is engaged in Vorkuta. Its first results after the joint session were announced at a briefing with the press. It turned out that subsidies from the state budget to support the coal miners of Primorye were misappropriated and never reached the coal sector. The accumulation of initial capital is achieved by some directors through the non-payment crisis. Facts were revealed also when specific budget funds, Primoryan heads, applied to the purchase of low-grade foreign coal, which further undermined the coal sector of the region. We have beatings and serious threats, and only if the government appoints a serious commission, and this will help, complex with the unions to untie this knot. There is basis so that the state as an owner and the government has a large package of shares, should examine the performance of the heads and analyze whether these directors should continue in their positions. At the joint session in the government building, the sides came to mutual understanding on the basic topic of the discussion. Restructuring of the sector is necessary, and to search for ways to coordinate and perfect productivity and defend interests of the miners. If there is a possibility to defend the people, then these actions will begin. If not, it's impermissible to start. Concluding without results were 3 days of talks in Sarajevo between the Special Representative of the Secretary General of the UN on former Yugoslavia with the leaders of the Bosnian sides. The talks to prolong the fragile truce are in a stalemate if within the next 2 or 3 weeks decisive steps are not achieved to strengthen it. Danger of the resumption of war will emerge, Akasi stated before flying from Sarajevo to Zagreb. Israel and Syria will resume direct talks regarding the Golan Heights in the next few days. This was stated in Damascus by the American Secretary of State, Christopher, after his meeting with the Prime Minister of Israel, Rabin, and the President of Syria, Assad. The talks were interrupted in December of last year, he said, and will be conducted as previously by the ambassadors of both countries in Washington. On Sunday and Monday, as a result of police clashes with extremists in Istanbul, according to preliminary reports, 16 people have died and more than 100 have been injured. Today, clashes occurred in Ankara. 13 demonstrators and 17 police personnel were injured. The disturbances, which flared up on a religious basis, developed now into protest meetings against the use of force by authorities. Meanwhile, in the FRG, a wave of raids on Turkish institutions continues. Last night, unidentified persons threw Molotov cocktails at tourist agencies belonging to Turkish citizens in Frankfurt on Main, Köln, and also at mosques and the Turkish Cultural Center in Hamburg. The Prime Minister of Great Britain, John Major, citing busyness, has refused to speak over the telephone with the American President Bill Clinton, which is viewed as an intended insult against the chief of the White House because of his position vis-à-vis the conflict in Northern Ireland. As was learned today, Bill Clinton unsuccessfully attempted to get through by telephone last Saturday to the residence of the British Premier. On that day, when the British Queen, with her visit to Belfast, marked the half-year of peace in Northern Ireland, the United States has decided to issue a visa to Gerry Adams. If the royal voyage was assessed as one more effort in the process of a search for stable peace, the invitation to the Sinn Féin leader, the leader of the political wing of the Irish Republican Party, to visit America, including a reception at the White House on St. Patrick's Day, produced an extreme irritation among the English, which developed into open dissatisfaction. First to publicly criticize the American administration was the Minister on the Affairs of Northern Ireland, Patrick Mayhew. Later, several critical arrows were tossed at Bill Clinton by the Prime Minister himself, John Major, who was in Israel. What caused the unusual polemic between the partners, who were always proud of their unique relations? Two things, first of all, sparked the wrath of English politicians. Several ministers indicated that during Friday's handshake between Bill Clinton with Gerry Adams, just as the visit to the United States, creates an excessive publicity for a man whose voice until recently was banned on British airwaves. Moreover, the type of the American visa issued this time to Gerry Adams permits him to openly seek sponsors, that is, to collect money. The opening of American wallets for the Irish Revolutionary Army with the blessing of the White House prior to the IRA agreeing to lay down its weapons forever, this many English politicians can't accept. And this increases nervousness and suspicion of the Protestants in Northern Ireland and complicates the creation of circumstances when, with the IRA, all sides in conflict could sit at the same table. The surrender of weapons becomes even more a more difficult barrier. Among English politicians, there is an opinion which the excessive pompousness of Adams' American visit will complicate overcoming that barrier and doesn't bring closer, but makes further perspective of peace. Will the scar between the relations of the two countries be healed by the Washington visit next month of the Prime Minister, John Major? This is still an open question. But in any case, when today Bill Clinton jokes that he is the spitting image of an Irishman, not many laugh at that joke here. And another scandal in Moscow. The split in the Bolshoi Theater, by many, is viewed by a tragedy of national culture. These prodigies, dreaming of the fame of Anna Pavlova and Vaslav Nijinsky, with difficulty comprehend what occurred in the Bolshoi Theater these days. Those who wanted to destroy the theater have laid their beginning. On the table of the general director of the Bolshoi, Vladimir Kokonin, lies a statement where 55 performers of the Romeo and Juliet ballet say they knew nothing of a strike right up to the beginning of the performance. The catalyst of the explosion was news that the directors issued instructions not to permit Yuri Grigorovich into the theater. How can one not permit Yuri Grigorovich into the Bolshoi? Someone is intentionally spreading these rumors. And he came, and if he wants, he can come. Simply, his request was satisfied to leave the Bolshoi. It's not the first notice of resignation. His first notice of resignation, Grigorovich wrote the 13th of September 1994 and ended it with the words, "I don't work here any longer." The second notice ends with the same words and accuses the directors of their insulting behavior toward the head of the ballet. The situation which has developed, the directors of the theater have decided to satisfy that request, especially since Yuri Nikolaevich didn't want to especially explain anything to anyone or meet. He went abroad and he's not here. The current strike is not the first in the history of the theater. A few years ago, Mikhail Gorbachev, having waited for the presentation to begin more than 20 minutes, satisfied all demands of the strikers and dispersed the management in the theater adversarial to Grigorovich. The action the 10th of March has other results. Material damage is assessed at 50 million rubles. This sum is to be recovered through courts from the strikers. Not to the benefit of the virtually impeccable reputation of the theater are constantly arising pre-strike situations and scandals in the press. Actors are emotional, but the theater is for a celebration for everyone. Most of all, lately the Bolshoi is remembered not in view of ballet or opera performances. And here is how a similar protest was launched by poor management of the theater and the management's refusal to extend certain contracts in the Milan La Scala. Mephistopheles and other Middle Ages characters appear to the public in jeans and sweaters, obviously with the protest, but masters, even in jeans, remain masters. I bid you farewell and ask forgiveness for certain rough spots in our program, but everything is as in life. At times reports are late, just like planes and trains. All the best. The sports news is ahead. Good evening. Today in Moscow, in the President Hotel, a press conference was held of the National Sports Fund, where Shamil Tarpishev, the chairman of the Coordinational Committee on Physical Education and Sports, said that despite the fact that in the budget, which was examined by the State Duma, there was no expenditure for sports planned, in the next days a resolution will be issued by the government according to which Russian sport will receive 93 billion rubles, and also losses will be covered, which resulted after benefits to sports organizations were revoked. The president of the NFS, Boris Fedorov, dwelled on new conditions in which the fund will function. The Russian alpine skier Varvara Zelenskaya was second again at the downhill race, this time in Italy, and she lost only to the American Peekaboo Street. And in the Italian, Alberto Tombo, the Olympic champion, won the large crystal cup earlier than expected. It is awarded to the athlete for victory in the overall count. The Army basketball team lost in the second quarterfinal match in the European Championships to the Greek Olympiakos club 77-86, and now the decisive match for the semi-final place will be held the 16th of March. The English soccer club Chelsea is in the semi-finals in the Cup of Cups, winning at home against the Belgian Bruges in the response match 2-0. The semi-finalists are also known in the UEFA Cup. They are the German Borussia, which beat Lazio 2-0, and Juventus, which won against Eintracht 3-0, and Parma from Italy tied 0-0 with the Danish Odense, and the Bayer Leverkusen tied with the French Nantes. I'll remind you that Parma and Bauer achieved advantage in the first match, and 0 ties allowed them to enter the semi-finals of the UEFA Cup. Today, also the response quarter-final match in the League of Champions was held. The report on Channel 1 Ostankino about the match Paris Saint-Germain-Barcelona at 23:05. At the World Championships in Thunder Bay, the relay of 4x5 kilometers was won by the team of the Japanese biathlonists. Jamaluddin Abdurrahparov is the second in the current phase of the bicycle race in Italy. Good evening. As usual at this hour, the weather. Karelia, the Murmansk, Arhangelsk districts, the Republic of Komi, tomorrow will be in a belt of high pressure. Here it will be partly cloudy with our precipitation from -2 to +3 degrees. The northwest area, the central and Volga-Bryansk area, and also the central Volga, for now are in an area of an anticyclone which is slowly departing toward the east. Here there's light cloud cover, no precipitation during the day, 0 +5 degrees. In the Kaliningrad district and in the Baltic countries, it's cloudy. By evening, rain is possible with wet snow, temperature throughout the night and day around 0. Under the influence of this same anticyclone are the central Chernozem areas and Belarus. Here, the skies are clear, no precipitation during the day from 0 to +5 degrees. In Ukraine and in Moldova, partly cloudy skies. By the end of the day, there will be some rain and wet snow. Temperatures during the day +2 to 7 degrees. The cyclone, which is shifting from the western areas of Turkey to the Black Sea, will bring to the south of Russia unstable weather. In the zone of an atmospheric front will be the Krasnodar-Stavropol rim areas, the republics of the Northern Caucasus, and Kalmykia. Here it will be cloudy with some rain and wet snow and isolated blizzards and drizzle. In the mountains of the Northern Caucasus yesterday and today, the strong rains fell, which caused active snowslides. The snowslide danger in the mountains will continue tomorrow. Temperatures here are from -1 to +4 degrees. In the Chechen Republic and in Ingushetia and Dagestan, around 0. In the republics beyond the Caucasus, it's cloudy with some brief rain, temperatures of +5 to 10 degrees. In St. Petersburg on Thursday, variably cloudy, no precipitation, at night around 0 during the day, +1 to 3 degrees. Cold anticyclone, and together with the cold weather, which frightened Muscovites so much during the last few days, is moving away across the Urals. In the next few days in Moscow, spring will return, and although at night it's still -4 to 6, here tomorrow it will be warm and with a southerly wind and temperatures from +2 to 4 degrees. That was the prediction of the weather for tomorrow. Have a pleasant evening.